Everybody's got that uncle that likes to get drunk and hit his kids and try to fight you at Thanksgiving, right? No? Just me? Awesome. Okay, we're going to talk about dysfunctional family horror movies at the Horror Movie Syllabus. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor, and I'm your host as we go through all of the essential, must-see, noteworthy modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out our introduction video. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. It'll explain how things work here at the Horror Movie Syllabus, but in short, we take a particular subgenre of horror and look at 3 particular noteworthy films in that subgenre. Today, the subgenre that we're looking at is dysfunctional family horror movies, and with the holidays right around the corner, I thought it might be a fun time to look at this one. Now, dysfunctional families are sort of a staple in horror movies. They are arguably more of a horror trope than a horror subgenre proper, and if that's your opinion, I wouldn't fight you on that. Still, there are enough movies that have the dysfunctional family as the core part of their plot or as a key component of the story, enough so that I felt it warranted having its own subgenre to explore a little bit more further here on the horror movie syllabus. The 3 movies that we're going to look at today definitely fit that bill, where the dysfunctional family is a key ingredient to the movie. As always, we have ranked the movies as undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate level, and these levels are going to indicate the level of intensity in the film. And to be clear, we're not talking about the level of horror or scariness in the movie, but really how intense it is, how disturbing or acute the family dysfunction is in the film. With that, let's go ahead and get into the films. Our first film that we'll be looking at today, our undergraduate level film, is Frailty. Frailty came out in 2001, and it's a deeply underrated film, in my opinion. It's a movie that was never a huge hit and has not gone on to become any kind of sort of uh, noteworthy classic film or even really a kind of a cult classic. It seems like so few people are familiar with the movie. It seems to have been forgotten, and that's an unfortunate thing because it's really, really good. The movie stars Bill Paxton and Matthew McConaughey, and it's actually directed by Bill Paxton. And it tells the story of a father who is something of a religious fanatic and how he's trained his 2 sons to believe that God is speaking to him and telling him to kill demons that are disguised as humans. As you know, I try not to spoil movies any more than I have to here at the Horror Movie Syllabus, so I won't tell you any more of the plot than that. Suffice to say, the film is a nice blend of family drama, religious fanaticism, and straight up horror. If you've watched other videos from the Horror Movie Syllabus, you know I'm a fan of religious horror. And while this movie didn't actually get put in the religious horror category, I definitely had to include it because the religious themes in here are something that really appeal to me. And if I'm being honest, a big part of why the dysfunctional family made it as a subgenre on the horror movie syllabus was to allow us the opportunity to add movies like Frailty onto the syllabus that didn't quite make the cut in other subgenres. Given the quality of the movie and the caliber of the actors involved, I'm really surprised that it wasn't a bigger hit when it came out, and I'm very, very surprised that it hasn't gone on to be a cult classic now. The movie is really, really interesting, really fun, and I don't think that it's the greatest horror film ever made, but I definitely think it's one that should be watched, that deserves a better reputation or better notoriety than it currently has, and that's why we included it here in the horror movie syllabus. If you haven't checked out Frailty, you owe it to yourself to give it a spin. Definitely check it out and let us know in the comments below what you thought of it. Moving right along to our second movie, the graduate level film, we're going to look at Stoker. Now, Stoker's maybe a bit of a controversial choice to put on the horror movie syllabus because you could make a pretty strong argument that it's not really a horror film, but really just a demented family drama. But as you know, we at the horror movie syllabus like demented family dramas. We definitely think that horror is not just jump scares or monsters trying to get you, but also that psychological feeling of unease or discomfort. And Stoker has that in spades. Written by Wentworth Miller, who you might know as Captain Cold from the Flash TV show, it's an interesting script that talks about family drama in a way that is probably going to be pretty uncomfortable for most, if not all of you. The plot centers around Nicole Kidman trying to deal with the loss of her husband, and her and her daughter trying to cope with that loss, and then her husband's brother showing up. To say anything more than that would probably delve into too much of spoiler territory, so we'll just leave it at that. But let's just say that things get progressively stranger, weirder, and more uncomfortable as the movie goes on at that point. This movie caught me by surprise when I first saw it. It was something that had been hyped up quite a bit, at least in the horror community. And I finally saw it on home video, and I was stunned by the quality of the film and just how edgy and dark and taboo it gets. The movie is directed by Park Chan-wook. Some of you might know him as the director of Snowpiercer or Old Boy or Thirst or The Handmaiden. All excellent films, and some of which will actually be talked about on the Horror Movie Syllabus. He's an incredible director with a masterful eye and an uncanny ability to tell a story. And all of his powers are on display in Stoker. The mood of the movie is incredible. It's kind of almost oppressive or suffocating in a way. And the tension level just stays at this level, like right here. It never really drops off, but it also never boils over. It kind of maintains this until the right moment. And I love movies like that. I love movies that can just kind of keep you at that just at that edge, that boiling point. And Stoker does it masterfully. All of the actors in the movie are really good, especially Nicole Kidman. She's always good. Every time that she's in a movie, it seems like she delivers. And all of the characters in the movie that they play are flawed in some way, and that's probably an understatement, really. They tend to be maybe demented might be a better word. Again, I don't want to get too much into spoilers, but the characters in this movie, wow, like you're going to be glad they're not your family members. Now, at the risk of spoiling the movie a little bit, I do want to give a trigger warning to those of you that might be a little sensitive to images of inappropriate sexuality. I'll just say it like that. This movie kind of goes into some dark places like that, and if that's an issue for you, maybe you want to do a little bit more research before you watch Stoker. Before any of you, especially the rest of you who aren't that sensitive to it, definitely check this movie out. It's a brilliant movie. It's really well made, really well acted. Everything from a quality filmmaking perspective is top notch. The movie is incredibly compelling. It's just an unnerving film. Don't really go in looking for jump scares and your traditional horror movie, but if you're going to be open-minded about things, Stoker's one you could definitely get behind. Check it out and let me know what you think. And the last movie that we'll be discussing today, our postgraduate movie, is Hereditary. Hereditary came out in 2018 and kind of set the horror community on fire. The movie is arguably part of what is called the elevated horror movement in horror. It's something that we'll talk about later in the horror movie syllabus, kind of a controversial subgenre, and I haven't included it in that subgenre. I've included it here, and I'll explain why in a second. But the long and short of it is that Hereditary is a phenomenally well-made movie by first-time feature director Ari Aster, and he knocks it out of the park in his first try. As of the time of this recording, Ari Aster's made 2 movies, both horror films, the other one being Midsummer, which, spoiler alert, will also be talked about in the horror movie syllabus at a later date. Both of these movies are incredible. Ari Aster has a directorial style and a visual eye that is a little unfair for a rookie director to have. If you have any aspirations of being a filmmaker or anything like that, Ari Aster probably is a little frustrating for you because he's so good at everything. Framing a shot, telling a story, directing performances. I mean, every aspect of this movie is almost flawless. And again, we're talking about his first movie. If you're not familiar with the movie, it deals with a family of 4 that is mourning the loss of the grandmother of the family. And I'm just not going to tell you anything more than that other than it goes into some crazy places. Like the other movies in this video, a key aspect to the plot of this movie is the dysfunction amongst the family members. And to see that there's a history amongst these family members that is wildly uncomfortable, and you can see the family dynamic breaking apart. You can see it fraying at the edges, and that alone is compelling viewing. In fact, I remember saying at the time, and I'll say it again here, Hereditary could have been a family drama. You could have cut out all of the horror aspects. You could have just pushed everything of that to the side and just dealt with these 4 family members dealing with each other and having this family dynamic in a straight up drama, and it would have been an absolutely incredible film. Adding a horror element to it for people like me who love horror was just like adding whipped cream to an ice cream sundae. It just made it that much better. I mentioned before that Ari Aster managed to direct some great performances out of his actors, and that's due in no small part to the caliber of the actors in the movie. Every single person in this movie is perfectly cast, and they're bringing their A game, especially the star, Toni Collette. She is phenomenal in this movie. I mean, she's typically phenomenal in everything. She's one of the most underrated actresses of our time. But here she's at the top of her game. It's a crime that she wasn't nominated for an Oscar for this movie, and perhaps if the horror elements had been taken out of it and it was just a family drama, she would have won an Oscar for it. But, horror movies don't get the love they should from the Oscars, so what are you going to do? There's so much to love about this movie, but I can't tell you too much about it without spoiling it for you. But one thing I will say is that it's got one of the best marketing campaigns for a movie that I've ever seen, in the sense that we often complain that movies will spoil too much in the trailers. This movie gets it right. You might feel like the trailer is spoiling something for you. It's not. This movie is going to go places that you're not expecting, and I love the fact that, unlike many films, watching the trailer before watching this movie might actually enhance the viewing experience rather than spoil it for you. So if you haven't seen this movie, maybe check out the trailer first and then watch the movie, because I feel like that might actually benefit you or actually improve the viewing experience. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So yeah, suffice it to say, I'm a huge fan of Hereditary. It was a very popular, well-received movie for good reason. If you haven't seen it yet, definitely check it out. I would almost guarantee that you're going to like it. I know not everybody loves it, but so many people do, and with good reason. Check it out. Let us know what you think of it. You won't be disappointed. I'm almost certain of it. Okay, so those are our three examples of dysfunctional family horror movies. If you like this subgenre, if you like movies that involve dysfunctional families, we've got a few extra credit films for you that you might want to check out. The first one that we'll talk about here is called The Woman. The Woman, directed by Lucky McKee and based on a Jack Ketchum novel, is pretty phenomenal. It's not a well-known movie. It didn't really make a lot of buzz. In fact, I don't even know if it got a theatrical release, but it's really, really good. And again, I don't want to spoil too much about it. I'll just tell you that it's a movie where a savage woman who's been living in the woods gets found by a family and taken in. And I'll stop there at it. But what I like about the movie is that it kind of turns convention on its head. The savage woman is not really the scary part of the movie as much as the family is, because again, we're talking dysfunctional families here. And again, I don't want to ruin the movie or anything, but I liked that kind of a shift in perspective, that the uncivilized woman is a little bit more civilized than the family that takes her in. It's a neat take on it. The next extra credit movie we'll talk about is The People Under the Stairs. The People Under the Stairs is directed by horror legend Wes Craven, who we've talked about before and we will talk about again. And it deals with some tough family themes like child abuse in ways that are maybe a little bit more palatable for people who might be sensitive to that kind of issue. It's a little bit more maybe allegorical, although that's probably overstating it a bit. Again, I don't want to spoil too much of the movie by explaining it away. Suffice to say that it's definitely worth a watch. It's become something of a cult classic. I think they're even planning a remake of it in the near future. Maybe Jordan Peele was going to be working on that. So definitely something that maybe you'd want to check the original out before the new one comes out. But a good one for Jordan Peele to tackle in terms of social issues and family issues. It's got a lot of deep themes, but not in a real heavy-handed or too serious or too depressing way. So that's one that I think that people get behind and enjoy pretty well. So check that one out if you haven't. And the last extra credit movie I'll mention is The House of a Thousand Corpses by Rob Zombie. This movie is the ultimate in family dysfunction. It follows the Firefly family, a clan of criminals, murderers that are demented and like to torment, torture, and murder people. It's over the top, bug nuts crazy. If you're familiar with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, it's kind of got that sort of a vibe to it. It's not for everybody. It's not everybody's cup of tea. Either you're into this kind of movie or you're not. It's kind of a ride into insanity, and it's pretty intense. I'm not going to lie to you about it. So only for the strongest warriors, the horror veterans. If you're new to horror, maybe start with some of the other movies we talked about on this list before you try House of a Thousand Corpses. I don't want to overstate it, but I don't want to understate it either. It's pretty violent. It's pretty intense. It's pretty Rob Zombie. So that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you check out some of these movies if you haven't already. I really like this subgenre. I like the dynamic of family dysfunction, and I think it works really well. It dovetails really nicely with horror. So I tend to like these movies a lot. It's part of why we put this as its own separate subgenre. If you don't think it should have been its own separate subgenre, leave a comment below and explain why you think it shouldn't have been that. Or if you think other movies should have been discussed in this video, let us know in the comments below which videos you would describe as the top 3 for the dysfunctional family subgenre of horror. With that, we'll close this video out. I hope you guys have a great day. Class dismissed.